What I'd like to do is introduce you to a process and a model that I stumbled across in trying to solve some problems in my own experience. How many have ever gone back from a conference, read a great book, have a great idea, and then you come into your environment and you find that there's resistance? So I want to introduce you to three kinds of problems, and these are very important for you to understand the distinction, because oftentimes when I work with companies, they confuse these. So if you use one of these solutions for the wrong kind of diagnosis, you get what we call unintended consequences. Have you ever tried an intervention and gotten unintended or unexpected consequences in the process? Anybody here experience that? All right. So I want to start out with light bulb problems. Now, this looks like a very simple problem, and I thought it was very simple when my wife asked me to go to the hardware store and say, honey, can you get a light bulb and replace the light bulb in the laundry room? So I say, no problem. I run to the hardware store, I go, and there's this bank of light bulbs. Wattage, daylight, soft white, LED, all of that. And so I decide to contact an expert. And I call my wife and I say, honey, which light bulb would you like? There's a bunch here. And I got the information, we got the light bulb, and we solved it. These are problems that have known solutions and oftentimes specific solutions, and are knowable, and we have a universe of these solutions. They're easy to solve. You just have to execute properly. I got some coaching on my execution for that particular item. She said it would be helpful if you probably wrote it down before you left. So that was my instruction. Then there are what I call crossroad problems. Have you ever been in the car with your family and made the mistake of asking, where would you like to go to dinner? And of course, competing interests, and with 3 kids and a wife, none of them could agree. So this is where leadership steps in. Who's the driver with the credit card? And leadership says, well, this is where we need to go. Now, with leadership, these are strategic decisions on where we're going to go, and you have to try to get alignment along the process, but also leaders take risk in making these kinds of decisions. Because there's the risk that not everyone's going to be happy with this, and I still have to work on getting alignment. So this is the second kind of decision necessary. It's which way should we go, and how do we get everybody to go in that direction? The kind of challenge we're going to talk about today are what I call hairball problems. Wikipedia calls them wicked problems. Now, wicked is not wicked in the terms of evil, although they can be evil, but wicked is in the terms of they're complex. They resist solutions, and oftentimes the intervention of a solution creates unintended problems. Have anybody ever lived with this kind of wicked problem? Okay, I want to show you how simple and how rudimentary a wicked problem can be. It's called cleaning the kitchen. So years ago, I made the mistake of giving my 3 kids different roles in cleaning the kitchen. Okay? And I have one child on the spectrum, autism spectrum. So whatever instruction I gave her, I'm not allowed to come back and change it. And so what happens is that my son was in charge of cleaning the dishes, or rinsing them and getting them in the dishwasher. My daughter's in charge of unloading the dishwasher, and my other son is in charge of cleaning the countertops. My first son doesn't always get the dishes rinsed and in the dishwasher, which now we have a backup, because that's not my daughter's job to do that. So now I try to go back, I try to change the kind of solution. I go back to a light bulb solution and give a schedule or a checklist. Doesn't work. I do a different strategy. It doesn't work. The real problem is the relationships between them. And so I'm trying to use either a light bulb solution or a crossroads solution for something that's relational and cultural in my family. And so I get wound up in trying to solve these in different ways, and really the root issue I've missed altogether. So in the business world, and a lot of what I do is marketplace ministry. And what we're going to actually be doing is a form of attacking principalities and powers. And they exist in your schools. They exist in my family. And I define a principality as a governing domain of thought and behavior. In the business world, we call those cultures. And then I deal specifically with what we call shadow culture. Every organization has, when I go in, they tell me what their culture is, and I smile politely, and I go in and say, well, we'll see. Because Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So unless we're dealing with the cultural dynamic, we can't ever get to innovation, and I'll make that connection in just a little bit. So the leadership triangle is a way to define these three different kinds of problems. They're all equally important, but they're different. The light bulb problems are tactical. If I break my arm, a doctor knows how to set it. It's a knowable solution. If I come in and I say I've got a pain, and we don't know what it is, then that's a strategic problem because we have to diagnose it properly to solve it. But if I go into the doctor and the doctor examines me and says, you know what? If you don't change your lifestyle immediately, you'll be in my operating room in the next 6 months for a heart operation. That's called adaptive or transformational. I've got to do some major personal change. And the neat thing about conferences like this is that you will walk away with lots of ideas. None of them will be innovative. They will be good ideas. They will be strategic, and they will be tactical. Because innovation starts with you. It's not doing innovation, it's becoming innovative. And so that's a different process, and I'll walk you through a little bit of what that process is today. So we try to approach and get stuck in the same thing I got stuck in the kitchen, of doing light bulb problems and crossroad problems. And the problem is that we can temporarily create a great solution. I once had a great chart on the refrigerator on everybody's role, and if somebody couldn't make their role, what the trade-off would be. Again, that didn't work. It was a sandcastle. It stood for about a day or two, and then the dishes kind of grew in the kitchen. It was a relational problem. Oftentimes, we create these solutions where a great leader comes in and brings in a new idea, and as long as the leader's there and putting their fingerprint on it, it lasts. But as soon as that leader leaves, or as soon as the program goes, or as soon as the funding's over, it goes back to normal. It's called regression to the mean. So we have another form of wicked problem, and that is when we come to the end of what's working without knowing how to get to the other side. So sometimes hairball problems also involve a chasm that you have to figure out how to cross. That's what I like to do, cross chasms. And so we take organizations through a process of going through that together. It's almost like a fellowship of the rings. Or in the movie Moneyball, it's the island of misfit toys. A bunch of people who feel commonly frustrated about a situation, and they come together not to complain, but to go on a journey and figure out, how do we move through this? How do we get to the other side together? You can't do it by yourself. And that's the challenge that I found in several industries, that many industries see common problems. For example, in the construction industry, did you know 70% of your projects come in late and over budget? How many have ever built a project? How many of them came in late and over budget? Okay, same hands. It's in the system. And so when I first started this process, the architects were trying to solve the problem, the contractors were trying to solve the problem, the technology, building information modeling people were trying to solve the problem, the sustainability people were trying to solve the problem, and the lean construction process people were trying to solve the problem. What's missing in the equation? They were all doing it by themselves. So they didn't see the whole problem. So that's number one, is we have to bring all the stakeholders together. Now the process has allowed us to jump into things that people ask, what's the connection between the church, capital project delivery, workplace culture, education, and workplace health and well-being. They're all stuck, number one. And number two, they're all stuck because they're complex systems with human dynamics. That's the common denominator. So let's start with one of the wicked problems we face, and it's this thing here. It's called a printing press. Some of you remember this printing press. I remember growing up in this world, in this system many years ago. And this is the foundation of the kind of education we deliver today. It pretty much has not changed since the invention of the printing press, and is pretty much based on literacy and written in the written word. And it established Western civilization and Western culture. Now, the challenge is that this thing has become its own principality and its own power center. It's become an institution. And what it does not do well is deal with one-off kids. It deals with batches. It deals with kids that arbitrarily have the same age. It deals with an arbitrary calendar schedule. And it's a factory system. And I put 3 of my kids into that factory many years ago. And what happened is the machine chewed up 2 of them. And I put one of them in a Christian school. She got chewed up there too. It's the machine. When my 11-year-old started showing the same signs, my wife and I said, we're not going to let the machine do this again, so we homeschooled at age 11. So the machine handles certain kinds of kids very well. About 50% of the kids do well in the machine process. And we'll explain that a little bit more. But it doesn't handle what I call the one-off kids. So on the other side, here they are. They're all doing well in their own way, and we survived, but not because of the machine. Now, Sir Ken Robinson talks about the experience that the system or the machine is designed to kill creativity. In the new research we're doing, we're working on a new book that maybe the machine is doing more than just killing creativity. It may actually be killing us. It may be killing our teachers. Teachers take double the amount of antidepressants than the average population. So we're looking at the caregiver's dilemma and the stress and the anxiety and what that does to us from a health perspective. And in the first book, The Humanizing the Education Machine, we basically dealt with 2 wicked problems. One is moving from Gutenberg to Google, that divide. And the second was the nature of the machine. How do we rehumanize learning? We're moving into a world where 85% of the jobs in 2030 don't even exist. Think about the implications of what we're teaching kids today and how we're teaching them. From a batched classroom, content-driven memorization, test-passing process to a world of having to learn how to adapt and work collectively and collaboratively and reinvent yourself over and over, we're woefully obsolete in the skills that we're providing them. 90% of CEOs say that the product we're producing isn't ready for the workplace that we're living in. So the good news, we're in the race. We're just getting lapped. So I want us to break out of this hairball problem we're in of being irrelevant. And we categorize schools based on their learning mode, what the learning experience was. We found that 50% of kids are being left behind, about 25% because of socioeconomic reasons, 25% because of learning differences. Christian schools ignore this, or they don't have the resources to deal with 50% of the kids that are being left behind today. What we do a good job with is the next category, which we called well-schooled but poorly educated. They can pass the test, get into college, but they don't have the social and emotional skills, the creative skills, the cognitive skills, the entrepreneurial skills to make it in a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. About 5% of schools are producing what we call future-ready kids. So, the hairball. This is our current state in education. We're on a melting iceberg. And because it's melting, we don't necessarily feel the urgency to do something, because every year we keep coming back to the same conferences and the same meetings. We just have some different box lunches that we're experiencing, but a lot of it's the same conversation. It's because we need to learn how to break out of wicked problems. So you remember we said that culture eats strategy. That's where your wicked problems begin. It's with the culture side. And my definition of culture is that it's what happens when you're not there. That's as simple as it is. I've read all the books on culture. We've consulted. None of them are worth anything because this is the bottom line of what culture is. And if you're happy with what's happening when you're not there to manage, to direct, to troubleshoot, and to hold accountability, if you're happy with that, you've got a good culture. And culture is very simple. It's either healthy or unhealthy by design or by default. That's all it is. You can map out where yours fits and decide where it's at. So in your boat, in your culture boat, if you're the typical organization, you've got 3 people in the front of the boat rowing, happy, engaged, glory to God, giving their best. They sing. They make me mad most days because they're so happy and they don't know that they shouldn't be. Then you've got 50% in the middle of the boat that are equally happy, but they're happy for a different reason. And you can look and see why. They're not doing anything. We call those the managed. They do a good job if you tell them what to do, tell them how to do it, and then follow up and make sure they... And they're the ones you go home and said, my 12-year-old could have figured that out. But it gets even better. You've got 2 in the back of the boat that are drilling a hole. Toxic. Gallup says you're better off paying them to stay home than to come into work. So the shadow culture is the beast that attacks you when you disturb it. Your culture is fine until you want to disturb it and change it, and then it looks like this. And we have a name for this creature in the dark parts of the cave. We have an acronym called Cave Dweller, and CAVE stands for Consistently Against Virtually Everything. And I actually do think there's more of them in our world than there is in the marketplace. I want to show you a little bit of our process here, the MindShift process, and we'll get into the exercise. The MindShift process that we have takes these really complex challenges that have been stuck for years. This summit was designed to take us to the front lines where teachers experience day-to-day stress, sometimes even trauma. Our whole purpose is to put ourselves a little bit into the shoes of the teachers who go through this day-to-day. And what we just found amazing teachers, really resilient, people who are dedicated and feel a high sense of purpose in what they're doing. However, what's not being explored is what it's really doing, the toll that they're taking on when they go home in the evenings. So today what you're seeing going on is a group that was immersed into this experience for the last 2 days, and they've broken into several teams. One team is looking at the challenge of how do you turn around a really toxic area, a high crime, high poverty, high trauma, and how do you come in from a storytelling standpoint and help a community think imaginatively, shift their story, and the story helps compel them into a new future. We've also got a team that's working on ecosystems. Now these are not physical ecosystems, these are social ecosystems. So they're coming in and helping us look at the experience we've had and filtering that through what are the different systems that are related here? What's the business system in this area? And how do you begin to link that more tightly with the social system, with the educational system, with the law enforcement system? How do you link these together and begin to shift how you move from interventions, multiple interventions, into something that's a healthy ecosystem? We're also looking at this through the lens of design. If architects and designers came into the same kind of situation, how would they approach it through their process? How would they help a community reimagine what they could build here? Not build just in a facility, but the facility is a representation of aspirations and values, and how do you use that to shift an area that's stuck and has been stuck and move that forward. So a fourth group is working on the teacher side of the conversation. How do we create early warning systems to know when a teacher is at risk of burning out? Typically, teachers care so much that they don't put themselves first. They don't say that I'm struggling. You don't know it until it's too late. So one of the teams is now working on not only assessment tools that we might be able to use, but just day-to-day observational skills that administrators and other teachers might have. How to reconnect teachers to one another, to each other, to create communities, to re-village a school. So this has been a really full 2 days that we've had here in Los Angeles. And what we expect to see is that the project will take us deeper and deeper into understanding how can we help teachers create safe, thriving learning classrooms. How can we help principals create schools that are connected and vital and not drained and not having high burnout? And use the information and the learning we have to re-examine the whole conversation about engagement and look at it through the lens of battle fatigue, caregivers who care too much, rather than looking at teachers who don't care. Okay, so are we ready to do some work? Are we ready to do some work? All right, so obviously we don't have 2 days together, but we will do a simulation. So this is kind of like buying a gym membership, and I'm going to walk you through the equipment today. You're not going to get a full workout, but it'll be productive and you'll get excited. If you want to hear more about this particular research project, I've got a session this afternoon that you're welcome to come, and we'll share with you the research we're finding about the mental health side of what we do and how we can use that as a leverage to create healthy, whole, connected. We're using the metaphor of re-villaging our schools as a catalyst to re-village our communities. We're also looking at schools and asking the question, are they the new field hospitals in America? And if they are the new field hospitals, then the mission is completely different. It's not about content delivery in college, it's about healing and health and wholeness. It's an interesting conversation we're having. You've got material at your tables. I'm going to walk you through a model that we work with that's very similar to Columbus, Indiana Civic Lab, and it's called a stakeholder model. So in order to get to wicked problems and solve those, the first thing you need to do is have the right who at the table, okay? That's the first quadrant. The second question, which I heard was linking in, is why are we collectively together? What is it that we can do collectively that we can't do separately? That's the big question when you bring the who together. So who has a stake in the outcome? Why are we together? What is it we can collectively do that we can't do alone? And then the third piece is the what. And the what first starts with, what is the problem? What is the wicked problem? When we did Humanizing the Education Machine and we dialed it all back, what we decided was that the system is designed to create insecurity and fear. It's designed to do that. And our job is to overcome that tendency and to rehumanize the environments we're in, because as soon as it gets to a certain scale and complexity, the beast or the machine shows up, and it becomes running more based on the demands of the machine and the beast than human touch, human judgment, human wisdom. And then the fourth part is the how. So we're going to get you through the who and the what today, and I'll walk you through doing that. So at your tables, pick the voice that you're going to be participating in. We need somebody to take the teacher's voice, an administrator voice, a parent voice, a student voice, whoever. Everybody's got to take a different voice in this conversation, and this is just for practice, okay? So take a couple minutes as a table, figure it out, and I'm going to be pushing you pretty rapidly and pretty hard on this because of the time, so work with me. The next thing your table needs to pick is which wicked problem it wants to deal with. And you're going to write it at the top of your flip chart. We're going to track everybody's content and compile that and give you the results back. And we can tie the different artifacts that you create together. So you're going to have to pick the wicked problem and name your table and carry that through. Now, you can pick a different wicked problem as a table, but I'm going to give you a little bit of time. And this is the exercise. This is the storytelling exercise from and to. And these are topics and things that as I've gone out, I found that I hear from schools that feel like they're stuck. We're stuck from fear. We're in a system of fear. How do we move to courage? We're dealing with the machine. I've got to make decisions based on the machine, but there's kids that I can't really do what I think is right for them. We're stuck in traditional teaching. How do we get to more project-based, collaborative-based, inquiry-based learning? We tend to be adversaries in the local market. I was at a Christian school conference that was regional, and local schools didn't want to share what they were doing with each other because they didn't want people stealing their students or secrets. How great is that? From white to mosaic. From siloed internally. I was just at a Christian school a couple days ago, and they were talking about, oh my gosh, the silos that exist here. It's everywhere. It's a wicked problem. You're not unique to it. From irrelevant to significant in your local market. From locally isolated to highly engaged in your local community. From a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. Is that enough wicked problems to deal with? Has anybody ever experienced any of these wicked problems? Okay, pick one. Just pick one to work on. Or come up with your own. When you've picked it, write down that wicked problem at the very top of one of the large posted flip chart pages. Okay? Pick your wicked problem and write it down. Okay. Now we're going to move into the exercise, and this is the post-it note part of it. This is called the 30-minute solution. Wouldn't that be nice if all of our wicked problems could be solved in 30 minutes? But this is designed to generate a lot of divergent thinking, then to convergent thinking, and then synthesize it. Again, we're simulating, but the way this will work is the very first exercise, every individual needs some post-it notes, and this is a quantity, not quality exercise. You're going to begin, the first step you're going to do is write down one idea or action on the from and to wicked problem you picked. And that's all you're going to do. And this is a heads down. This is not a social exercise. This is a heads down exercise. So I shouldn't be hearing anybody talking. I'm just acting like a teacher, right? Yeah. I just want to see how well that goes over with a group of teachers. I've always wanted to do that. So I'm going to give you about 3 or 4 minutes to generate as many post-it notes as you can, and then I'll explain to you the next step. So you have your wicked problem, and now you're going to generate as many ideas or actions, one per post-it note as you can, and keep them in front of you, okay? Okay, step 2. This is the socializing process. Each person is going to quickly share their post-it notes. The post-it note is not a prompt to a speech. It's whatever is written on the post-it note. I'm with a group of partial pastors and teachers, so I have to qualify that. And creativity comes with constraints, and our big constraint is time. So each person go around the table and share what they shared. The primary purpose is so that we understand what that post-it note means, because we're going to then consolidate these. Okay, if your table is a group of overachievers, you can actually transition into the next category. Take room in the middle of your table and begin bucketing these into 5 categories. No more than 5. There can be less than 5, but no more than 5 categories or buckets. You can transition into the bucketing exercise. Okay, as you get your 5 categories, come up with a theme or a title for each bucket that you've come up with. So that's a header on top of that column. So you've got a column of items that are in that bucket. Come up with a header that titles or labels that bucket. So as you're doing that, then move into coming up with the most important 3 steps to move forward with your solution. So that's the next step here. So at this point, you should have your Post-it notes on top of the table, grouped in categories labeled, and now start working on the next 3 steps that are important to move forward. As you're working and finalizing your categories and your next 3 steps, assign an individual to write down on the Post-it, the flip chart, your 5 buckets, and if there's any descriptor underneath those categories you want to add, you can add that. And then the 3 steps. So on the flip chart, your final product will have your 5 categories and your 3 steps. Okay, when you've finished, make sure you've got your team name and your wicked problem at the top of your poster. You've got your 5 categories, your 3 action steps. So now you're going to photograph that, take a picture of it, and send it to this email address. Make sure the name of the team is on there and it's distinct enough we can tie it together. Okay, one more exercise, so I need your attention up forward here. One of the powers we found in breaking the stronghold of a wicked problem is the narrative that we get stuck in. We created a shortcut to getting to the wicked problem. We gave you some general ones. We unpacked the wicked problem a bit. We got our arms around it and we got to play with it, but now we need to break the stronghold of the narrative. What we use is the Pixar formula for telling a story. What we're going to do, you have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with these items on there. And what I want your table to do is synthesize the work you just did through this formula. And you will go and write a story. Once upon a time there was. Every day, one day, because of that, until finally, and ever since then, what? So I'm going to give your table about 5 minutes to put what you just did into a story narrative. Who's ready to read their script if we're ready to go? Who's ready? All right, Michael, you want to hand the mic over to somebody to share?
Rex, we have someone over here.
Once upon a time, machines ruled the desert. Every day, people punched in and punched out. They endlessly reported to the machine. One day, a brave team of heroes defied the machine. Because of that, the machine began to falter. Picture dramatic music in the background. Because of that, others saw the truth and light until finally the entire community came together. And ever since then, all the humans now ruled the land.
All right, let's give them a hand. What a great start. Excellent. Okay, another microphone, another story.
Once upon a time, there was a school with grown-ups who were scared of the beast named Change. Every day, the grown-ups would quietly, with slouched posture, do their jobs, hoping the beast would not show up. One day, out of the blue, the beast arrived. However, on that day, one grown-up explained why the beast was there through a school-wide text and parent coffee chat. Because of that, the beast got a little smaller and less scary. Because of that, the next day the beast showed up, the grown-ups stood a little taller, until finally the beast became part of the community. And ever since then, clear, consistent, authentic community and communication happens.
All right, let's give them a hand. Great job. Now, I know we've got some mics over in this category here. Let's go to the right-hand side here.
Once upon a time, there was an isolated and overwhelmed ogre of a teacher who was always ogre it. Every day, the teacher put her stress onto the students, and the students were very sad and didn't love learning. One day, the professional development fairy godmother appeared and gave the teacher tools, resources, and rest. Because of that, the teacher transformed into a super teacher and loved her content and loved her students. Because of that, the students connected to her and the environment changed for the better. Until finally, students began to take responsibility for their learning. And ever since then, they became lifelong learners.
Excellent. Great job. Let's give them a hand. And we got one more, final one. The finale.
Once upon a time, there was a Christian school. Every day they strived to do and be their best. One day, they realized they were irrelevant to their students. Because of that, they decided to make a change for the better. Because of that, they developed their why to celebrate birthday diverse teachers and students, until finally there was a safe space, relevant classes, and students felt like they truly belonged. And ever since then, the Christian school made a significant impact on their community and stakeholders and for the kingdom of God.
Woohoo! Okay, give yourselves a hand. Make sure you photograph your Pixar story, that it's labeled the same as your poster. Send it to the email. Thank you very much.